My name is Jason.
Yeah. I'm Tyler.
This is Tyler. So first and foremost, we're going to go through the mise en place, right? And on the mise en place section, the first item we have up is your non-stick pan. So go ahead, find your best non-stick pan, right? This is 11 inches, right? And 11 inches is perfect.
Yep.
If you have bigger than that, you don't want that. If you have smaller than that, then that works great too.
Yeah.
But you don't want anything bigger than 11 inches. Next, you're going to need a medium or small bowl, a bowl that you can fit 3 eggs in. You'll need a fork.
Yep.
Right? The fork is what we're going to use to beat the eggs. You guys will see it aerates eggs perfectly. A whisk does too much.
Yep.
And a spatula does not enough. So a fork is your perfect happy medium. And then you'll need a spatula, right? And so you want a spatula that can stand the heat that you can use while you're making this omelet. And then you'll also need a knife to cut the mushrooms.
We got our knife. And we also have our lovely cutting board. We will need a bowl so we can wash the chanterelles in. In French, they're called girots. And then we have our beautiful assortment of mushrooms. So we have the lovely chanterelles, which will have a beautiful flavor. We have these oyster mushrooms, which have a really nice meatiness, right? As well as a beautiful flavor. And then we wanted to add, we got our hands on some cinnamon cap mushrooms. So these mushrooms, they're actually a delicacy over in Japan. But we get them locally over here. They have a slight like moisture on the outside of the cap. And so that really contributes to a delicious like umami flavor and texture that when we saute them up, you guys will see they're absolutely lovely mushrooms.
So mushrooms are pretty cool. They're kind of like humans in the fact that they actually breathe in oxygen and release CO2. And so with that, sometimes you'll see the bag get puffed up, but that's totally fine, right? That's just them. It's actually a sign of a healthy mushroom.
Yeah, and it's crazy. Like fungus, from like a science point of view or whatever, it's actually closer to an animal than a vegetable, than a plant, right? They respirate, so they bring in oxygen and they release CO2. So truffles fall under that category as well. Then we have our thyme and garlic, right? Those are going to be our flavoring elements. We have our lovely butter, because you cannot make a French omelet without butter.
Cannot.
I don't even know how you would attempt to do that. We have olive oil for sauteing our mushrooms. We have our beautiful, this is one of Jason's favorites, so I'll let him explain this.
Yeah. So it's a marinated goat cheese from Shavu. This is the rosemary and smoked salt, right? This stuff is insane. And what we're trying to do here is mimic that classic French omelet with boursin. And if you ever had that, you know how incredible it is. And so what we're trying to do is replicate that same dish, but with all kind of local Northern California producers. So the mushrooms come from Far West Fungi. The Shavu, we're working with Tamales Bay cheese to get that in. And then the dairy's local, the herbs are local. The truffles come from a local truffle company.
Fact.
Called Truffle Shuffle.
Yeah. Speaking of truffles, we have our lovely Balinese truffle salt.
Ooh.
The truffle Carpaccio.
And then we got the egg.
We got to make a 3-egg omelet.
So the first thing we're going to do is chop the mushrooms.
So I got the different mushrooms. And so first things first, again, I'm going to grab a bowl and we're going to fill it up with warm water to wash the dirt off these chanterelles. Basically, you want it to be big enough where you can mix them up, right? And they can float around. So fill that up with warm water. With dirt, it'll really, really stick onto that mushroom. So if we tried to wash these in cold water, it'd be very difficult. But if we use warm water, it helps free up that soil a little bit. At the restaurants we've worked at, you wash the mushrooms right before cooking them, and they are just fine. You don't want to wash a mushroom and then put it back in the refrigerator, because then it starts to get weird, you know? But if you wash the mushrooms, then immediately cook them, you will have no issues at all. And I'm just going to move them around and just use my fingers and just brush the dirt off of them. We're just washing the chanterelles right now. The other mushrooms, the oysters and the cinnamon caps, they don't need to get washed. They're not dirty. And then again, we're just going to dice everything up so it's about into bite-sized pieces. with the chanterelles, basically the larger mushrooms, I'm going to quarter. If you have smaller mushrooms, you might want to just cut them in half, but basically, use your best judgment. And we want kind of nice bite-sized pieces, just like that right there. These are going to lend that beautiful flavor to these marinated mushrooms that we're going to put on top of our omelet. If there's like a little brown spot or something on the bottom of them, you can nip that. Mine didn't have anything. The stems were pretty clean. But if you do have a stem that's a little dirty, you can just trim it. And then all this mushroom trim, make sure you save it, because when you make chicken broth or mushroom stock or anything, and you add this to it, it'll add that beautiful flavor to it. And once you trim the mushrooms, you can pop them in the freezer and they'll keep really well. So now I'm going to go on to cutting the oyster mushrooms. So with these guys, you see they grow in clusters. So down here is like the root area. And so we're just going to trim that root a little bit, because down here it's just a little tougher, right? And again, that's perfect for like a mushroom stock or a vegetable stock or chicken stock. So I'm just going to trim that piece, right? Put it off to the side. And then honestly, I'm just going to break these guys up with my hands just into nice little clusters. With the cinnamon caps, basically, as you can see, they have this beautiful cap to them. And if you smell them, they smell almost a little bit spicy. And so what we're going to do is trim that cap, and then we're going to cut a couple bits of that stem. Because, again, that adds like such a beautiful diversity of texture to these mushrooms. I'm just going to grab a little plate. That way I can show you guys, because one of my favorite things about getting all these mushrooms is just seeing the variety. Look at that. All those different colors, textures.
So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys what you want to do to cook these mushrooms. So I got a little bowl out here. That will be for the mushrooms when they're finished. So I have the olive oil out here. And I've got the same non-stick pan that we're going to do the omelets in. It's very important. I'm going to get the pan hot first. And I'm getting this to medium-high heat. From there, I'm going to get the olive oil in there. But you don't want to add the olive oil until the pan is hot. And a very good technique that you can use, right, is if you take your hand and put it close to the pan, and if your hand feels hot, it means the pan's getting hot. That's how chefs become really good chefs.
Yeah.
Because you use the same pan, the same heat.
Yeah.
You get that sensor, right? You're like, okay, it's ready. And then you're able to go. I got the olive oil getting hot. And what I'm looking for shimmers, but I don't want a lot of smoke, okay? I want the touch of smoke. And this is very important, guys. See what I'm about to do, okay? I'm taking these cold mushrooms. I'm putting them into the pan. And then I'm going to turn the heat up, right? I'm going to turn the heat up. And then you don't want to put your hand close to this now that you got the mushrooms and the olive oil in there. But I got the heat up. And I'm going to let that cook for about 20 seconds, right? And then I'm going to add the next round of mushrooms.
Yeah. And if there's kind of some moisture coming off and they're kind of spitting around, welcome to cooking. That's part of the process, is how it works. And basically, mushrooms are like 90% water. And so you're cooking the water off the mushrooms.
What I'm looking for here is to ensure that there's not an excess amount of liquid in this pan.
Yep.
So I'm keeping it hot, right? And now I'm going to add the rest of these cinnamon candy cap mushrooms. And once we get all the mushrooms out, go ahead and get that garlic and thyme handy.
At the ready.
And now we're going to add the thyme, right? Ooh. So we're just getting this in there.
Yeah, we are.
And you see the garlic here. You're going to smash it with the palm of your hand. And leave it in the jacket.
Yep.
Right in the jacket, right in the palm of your hands. And then we're going to add it to the mushrooms.
Ooh, and that's a beautiful way of adding garlic, because it adds the flavor of garlic without the intensity of adding actual chopped garlic.
Yep.
Right? And so this way of cooking, garlic like that in French is called en chemise. It means in a shirt.
I just added all the truffle carpaccio to the mushrooms.
Ooh.
And now we're going to add a pinch of our truffle salt.
Yep. Very important to season from up high.
You want to season from as high as possible, okay?
We're basically making like quick marinated mushrooms.
Yeah.
With the marinade, you want seasonings in the form of truffle salt. You want flavorings with our thyme and garlic. You want oil. You want mushrooms.
So you always want to taste them, right, guys?
Always. Absolutely stunning.
Awesome. And then I'm going to go ahead and take out the goat cheese and lay it on this plate.
And so the reason why we use this goat cheese, because in the marinade like that, again, marinades allow like outside flavors to really penetrate whatever the item is. So for instance, this goat cheese has a little bit of rosemary. So again, we didn't want to add the force, so to speak, of fresh rosemary, but we did want to add just a hint of it. And so that's going to come up in that goat cheese. And so Jay took the goat cheese out of the olive oil, and now he's just breaking it up so that way it disperses throughout that omelet. And then hold on to that olive oil. That's the marinating olive oil. It's in that goat cheese. It's unbelievably delicious for making salad dressing or honestly drizzling on pasta. It's so good. So hold on to it.
Now that your mushrooms have cooled down a touch, right? We'll take out the thyme and garlic in the mushrooms.
Yeah.
The trick about the entremets is it perfectly flavors with garlic, but you got to remember to go back in there and get it out. You smash it, but you don't obliterate it, right?
Yeah.
Because if you obliterate it, the whole garlic uncooked and the skin is unpalatable.
Yeah, meaning it doesn't taste good. So at this point, we have our mushrooms cooked. They're in the bowl, marinating. We just removed the thyme and garlic. We have our goat cheese out of the olive oil. We just got it on a little plate over here and kind of broke it up a little bit. All right, so we're gonna make 3 egg omelets, right, in the traditional French style. And so basically the reason why we had you guys start by cooking the mushrooms is it gives us a little bit of time for these eggs to temper, which is a very important part of cooking an omelet, because you guys have probably heard about tempering, but basically the idea behind it is you want to bring the item closer to room temperature, because then it'll cook more evenly in the pan. So basically into this bowl, I'm cracking 3 eggs.
What's the secret to crack an egg and not shatter the eggshell?
Yeah.
When you hold it like that, and what you're doing is you're not holding it like this. See the difference? So you're holding it in a way where when you go to crack this thing, these fingers, as soon as you crack it, they like push the eggshell away, right? And so that might be a little complicated, and then you want to crack right on the edge. And so you crack right on the edge and then split it.
I'm going to take a very accurate measurement of 1/2 eggshell of cold water, and I'm going to add that to the eggs. The reason why you want to add that half eggshell of water is because it lightens the omelet. We got a little bit of water in our eggs, and now we're going to add just a pinch of truffle salt, right? We're going to grab our fork. We're going to whisk up the eggs. So the reason why you want to add a fork instead of a whisk, right, is because a whisk, when you mix the eggs up, it creates too much air. It creates too many bubbles. Whereas a whisk will aerate the eggs, but it doesn't create bubbles. And the reason why you don't want too many bubbles is because they cook unevenly. Because basically the bubble is a little guy of protein with air in the middle. And so when you try to cook that, obviously the protein cooks super, super fast. And so it just doesn't cook right. So basically what I'm going to do is take my fork, I'm going to tap each of those yolks. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to whisk them with the fork. But basically what I'm doing is I'm scooping underneath and I'm pulling up, right? And what that's doing is adding air to the eggs. Oh, yeah. And it's super important to add air because they add like a buffer almost to the eggs as they cook. And again, they result in that beautiful, light, airy omelet as opposed to that dense, rubbery omelet. As you can see, I'm basically pulling the eggs up with my fork. You're always going to create some bubbles, but you just want to create a minimal amount of bubbles. And you want to whisk everything up until it's completely homogeneous. I got my eggs all whisked up, looking absolutely beautiful. Set them off to the side. So I got my spatula, right? I got my pan. And so when you are cooking an omelet, you got to cook it over kind of high heat. If you cook it over really low heat, it's going to give you some problems, because basically what you want to yield with an omelet is you're basically making scrambled eggs and then just setting that one side of the eggs and rolling it up and putting it in the pan. And so in order to do that properly, you got to cook it on a little bit higher heat, and it's a very quick process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take half of our butter, right, and I'm going to add it to the pan. I'm going to add it to the pan while it's still relatively cold, because the butter is an excellent indicator of the heat of the pan. One of the best ways that you can tell that your pan is at the correct temperature is you move it around and it'll start to foam up. You see that? So I have no idea what temperature that actually is like from a science point of view, but I know it means it's getting hot because it's cooking the water out of the butter, right? And so if you don't have the nicest nonstick pans in the world, just make sure you get a lot of butter spread out all over that pan, right? Because it's important, because the fat is what helps with the eggs not sticking. It's the fat and the temperature when you add the eggs.
It's at 280 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's the perfect time to add my eggs. So I'm going to add all in with the eggs. And what happens is it starts cooking pretty much immediately. And so what you got to do is you got to shake the pan like this and stir it at the same time. I'm cooking. And then I'm pulling it kind of back from the heat, right? And letting the rest of the eggs catch up, right? Because these ones that have formed curds, they're cooked. But then the liquid ones are still a little bit undercooked, right? And so again, basically I'm making scrambled eggs, so I got to move it around just a little bit more. And then once you get to this stage, I'm just going to turn my heat off. And then basically the eggs act like almost like a paintbrush, you know? And where you can fill in all the little cracks. We got our eggs completely cooked, and I got the pan off the heat right now. And it's important to do that because you don't really want any brown color on the backside of that omelet. And so I'm just going to come around the edge, make sure my edges aren't sticking on that, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to add the goat cheese right to the middle. So the way we like to do it is you got the handle of the pan. I'm going to add the filling right in the middle, right down the middle. Again, we're showing you guys how to make French omelets, which, you know, in America, a lot of times the omelet is looked at as like, it's all about the filling, not so much about the egg, but the true star of the omelet is the egg. So it's just a little bit of filling, right? So I got the goat cheese in here. I'm just going to spread it out, and now I'm going to roll it up. I'm just going to tilt the pan this way, and I'm going to start rolling the omelet. So what I do is I just grab it with the spatula and start rolling it towards me. And having it tilted like that really helps. You can see I get it to that stage, right? Where I got a little bit of lip left. And that's going to help when I actually go to plate it, which you just get it right there at that stage. What I do is at this stage, I got my rolled omelet right here. And what I'm going to do is basically have this land on the bottom of the pan. So I'm going to lean the pan in.
Ooh.
I'm going to roll it off the edge, right?
Oh, man. Oh, look at that.
Stunning omelet, right?
Nice.
And so now all you do is you come in here and we're just going to top it with our beautiful marinated mushrooms. Last but not least, we're going to make sure to hit it with a little bit of Balinese truffle salt.
Ooh. Look at that. Nice.
And so
soft. You guys see that?
Right. And as you can see, if you just spread it apart, this is kind of the best way to see it. It's scrambled eggs, right? That's rolled up. That's all the omelet is.
My butter is bubbling.
Yeah, it is.
Perfecto.
Getting nice and foamy.
And you don't want to go in when it's too cold.
No.
I'm going in. One last whisk here.
Nice.
So this one, I'm going to let it sit for like 1 second. Then I'm going to whisk it and let it sit again, and then put the goat cheese on and fold it.
Look at that. Look at that technique right there. That's years. That's years of experience.
So I whisked it. I let it sit. I just smothered any eggs that seemed runny, right? I got the goat cheese nice and melty. And then now what I'm going to do is very similar, but we're going to go for a tri-fold, okay? And then I'm going to get one edge down here and then fold it over that. And then take these incredible mushrooms, put it right over the top. And so you see Tyler's, and this is a tri-fold omelet.